and just talk about the forum today.
All right, thank you, Melanie. I'm Ernest Lunning with Colorado Politics, and we're happy to have everyone here. And this is the only debate scheduled so far in this race. There may be another, but let's hope this one goes well. I'd ask, this debate is going to be devoted to economic and business issues, and hope that we'll have a lively discussion between the candidates. From what I understand, you disagree on a lot of these topics, and let's hear it out. Let's let voters know where you're coming from. If you would each please introduce yourself, tell us why you're running. Each have 1 minute, and according to the coin toss, we'll start with Tricia Calvarese.
Thank you all so much for being here. It's truly humbling. I'm from here. I grew up here. I was raised by conservative parents on traditional family values, to respect the day of work, veterans, our elders. I went to Douglas County schools, and that earned a full academic scholarship to the Johns Hopkins University. I was most recently working in Washington, D.C., in the federal government, when life happened. Both my parents had cancer at the same time. Thankfully, I could move back home to Highlands Ranch and provide end-life care. They did pass last fall, days apart, and before he did, Dad, a lifelong Republican, told him to step up and return the investment this community made in me. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm running to make care easier, costs more affordable, and to keep America. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Lauren Boebert, 1 minute, please.
Hello everyone, it is wonderful to be here in this lovely Littleton and Douglas County. Thank you so much EDC for putting this on. Thank you so much Kevin and Don for opening this facility to us. And thank you all so much for your dedication and passion, because ultimately that is what this is all about. Together, we are going to take our country back. We are going to bring back prosperity. We are going to secure our southern border. We are going to create jobs, bring industry to our communities, and get government out of the way. This is the people's government. And so having your voice in the room is the most important thing. Now, I grew up in a Democrat household, but my mom believed a lie. She believed that you needed government to take care of your family. And when I started working at 15 years old, I saw with that first paycheck, first of all, I'm like, this fucking guy, he's taking a lot of my money and he's salt and fries with me. But I could do a better job taking care of myself than government ever had, and I'm here to prove that to you today. Thank you so much.
All right, here we go. Thank you both. For our questions here, we're going to give each candidate 90 seconds to respond, and then you'll each have 45 seconds if you'd like to respond back to what your opponent said. For the first question, we'll start with Lauren Boebert. This is a particularly pressing issue here in Douglas County and across Colorado. What can Congress housing both more affordable and more available in Colorado's 4th congressional district? I'd like you to keep, and the sponsors here ask that we keep in mind the existing water resources available here in Douglas County. So,
I'm sure there will be other water questions that we'll be able to dive in deeper with that. But here in Douglas County, when it comes to water and housing development, it is the development that is our focus for water. But when it comes to affordable housing, it's important to get the federal government out of the way. We have increasing inflation. We have inflation that is at highs and has been under this administration because of the reckless spending in Washington, D.C. You cannot just throw money at a problem and have it go away. The housing market has increased, and unfortunately, it has made it more difficult for all of us to afford to be able to live. There are many things that we can do to get out of the way and allow economic development, allow growth, allow businesses to have their companies here in our areas, their employees, and create prosperity for all. It does not work when the federal government comes in and controls our local communities, especially like the Harris campaign is now with with price fixing. This is not something that helps us prosper. When it comes to affordable housing, I think there are great programs where the federal government can help in some areas. For instance, I'm a co-sponsor on Joni's bill for our foresters and our firefighters, so we lease out those public lands on BLM and have that being available to those who are taking care of our lands.
Thank you. Tricia, Calvarese, what can Congress do to make housing both available and more affordable in the district?
Well, and towards the point of sustainable development, we cannot play games with our water. So the Congresswoman voted against a bipartisan bill that would have invested in our water infrastructure. And then she earmarked $10 million for special projects, and then she voted her own $10 million earmark. So I don't know where she stands on water, but I'll tell you what, I grew up here, I grew up drinking the water, haven't had a cavity in my life, thank you very much for the fluoride, and we want to keep it that way. We want to keep it pristine, and we want to make sure that we're our ag communities, right? I want to point to Sterling Ranch as an excellent example of housing innovation, where there are sustainable models to it. We need a federal champion for that, for the great work developers are already doing, and we need to cut red tape. But we have to get serious about it. You know, the American Rescue Plan, I would like to point this out, learned the lessons from the Great Recession, when folks like you, Representative, lost their homes. 8 million people kept their homes, thanks to the policies of this administration. So I think we need, of course, more housing. We want to get more folks into housing, but home ownership is at a high, and I'm one of those. But the pressures of a mortgage and rising costs. But we have to have smart policies, and simply being, playing games, saying you voted for something but voted against it is not the way to actually do that.
All right.
I did not go to Washington, D.C. to vote on omnibus bills, to vote on bills that spend trillions of dollars, multi-thousand pages long, but we have 22 hours to read. So when talking about the American Rescue Plan or the infrastructure bill, well, first of all, the American plan, only 9% of that went to anything COVID health related, and that's what the topic was. Infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion, only 9% actually went towards infrastructure. Now, have I fought for and advocated for spending here and there? Absolutely. And local stakeholders will argue that the funding would not arrive had I not put in the work to ensure that it was a part of the legislation. Now, it's not up to me how that final bill comes up for passage. I will not put my yes vote to an omnibus bill or something that is not single subject.
What was up to you, though? What was up to you, though, was voting to lower costs of prescription medication. So I want to tell you a story, Representative Boebert. My dad was diagnosed with terminal kidney cancer, and I got 4 extra years of life with him, thanks to life-extending medication that his union retiree benefits. You voted to keep the medicine high and out of reach for millions of seniors that gave me 4 extra years of life with my father. That was a clear vote. You voted against it.
Question number 2 here. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell last month that the U.S. economy has managed to achieve a soft landing with the Fed's policies, bringing down post-pandemic inflation, causing a recession or high unemployment. The economy even grew at a respective 3% annual rate in the last quarter. But Americans are not feeling it. Tricia, Calvarese, we'll start with you. What can lawmakers do this year in the next Congress so consumers feel as good about the economy as the economists do?
This is an excellent question, and indeed the economist said it itself. A soft landing seemed almost impossible, and here we are. From inflation where it was over 7% now down to 3%. Now, how did we get here? How did we get here? The pandemic made it crystal clear the consequence of decades of offshoring and outsourcing our manufacturing and innovation base. So, we can see when those supply chains stalled, the consequences in our costs. We've reshored a lot, making a lot of progress, exactly like Ernest said, but we have a long way to go. We need to make it in America, invent it in America, discover it in America. That's what the CHIPS and Science Act is aiming to do, passed with bipartisan. I was on a farm just a couple days ago, and this farmer shows me his the pesticides, $15,000, and it's made in China. You're telling me in the AI era that we can't innovate, that That's going to farmer grow more food. That's going to drive down the cost of food. That's going to make it better and easier for everyone. We also need that infrastructure. I don't know if you've been out in the Eastern Plains, but we want to build the connections and the networks so that people can prosper. That includes in 2024 getting internet everywhere in Colorado. That folks have access to the economy so that they can be, they can access. We also need to stop the conglomerates from price fixing with algorithms, as we're seeing in ag.
Thank you. Lauren Boebert, 90 seconds. What can lawmakers and Congress do so that consumers feel as good about the economy as economists?
The best thing that lawmakers in Washington do is stop spending your money. You are all taxed on everything, double taxed and triple taxed, and that money is spent at the blink of an eye. Things are rubber stamped in Washington, D.C. on a regular basis. $1 trillion is nothing for a piece of legislation to go through both chambers and to be signed by Joe Biden when he can find his pen. We use it more often. But that ultimately is the biggest problem that we are facing. Every 100 days, our national debt increases by $1 trillion. I have been opposed to debt spending at every turn. Over and over again, we see legislation come where we are borrowing more money from China in the name of our allies. It is immoral and unsustainable to continue this rate of spending and not focus on our debt. I'm ready for Congress to actually do its job, have a budget that balances, and that's why I've introduced a balanced budget amendment, and to live means. The taxpayer are not the federal government's credit card. They can just continually max out and then print more money when we're out of it. There is so much that we can do to prosper economically in every community if the federal government would get their spending under control.
Thank you. Calvarese.
If you were so worried about the debt, why were you at the vote? You missed it. You weren't there. So that's, point 1 and 2. For every dollar that we're seeing spent on the Inflation Reduction in public money, $5 to $6 of private capital is following. This is the kind of investments we need for America to lead in a very competitive global environment.
Sure, it's not just the legislation that comes out of Washington, D.C. with the spending that is attached to it that is our focus. It's also the policies that were put forward by the Democrat Party. Now, they were in the majority through when I first was elected. They've had the Senate and the White House in the following year and a half. And it's also the policies that are devastating us. The red tape, regulations, even with our energy industry, that is literally regulating our communities in poverty, or the wide open southern border, where we are defunding those folks who work for our local governments in cities like Denver to house illegal aliens. Your money is being spent in places that it has been spent, and I want to be a good steward of that.
Next, we'll start with Lauren Boebert. The 4th CD is an economically diverse district, as Ellie said. Up here in Douglas County, we finance healthcare, technology, based around this part of the district, agriculture, oil and gas out in the plains and up north. What specifically would you do to support businesses across the district?
Yeah, so I have spent 3.5 years covering all of these industries throughout Colorado. It's never been one community specific, because I understand that as Colorado prospers together, we all crossing those boundaries, those district lines, those county lines, to allow others to be innovative and do what they do best. When it comes to farmers and ranchers, having the ability to continue their generational farms, having the water that allows them to produce the crops, to have the beef that we all enjoy so much, to have a national that is healthy, so we can all benefit from the 80% of watershed comes from our national forest. When it comes to our health industries, I have been awarded with distinguished awards by our rural health community centers. We have advocated for them, providing critical access designation that they've worked on for years to obtain, or even my Convey Act that we are working on Congress that allows the city of Clifton to purchase 31 acres of Bureau of Reclamation so they can have economic development. All of it is about getting government out of the way or raising awareness and providing the ability for them to do their jobs, especially when it comes to our oil industry. We have been regulated into poverty, and unfortunately the Democrats only care about the Green New Deal agenda.
Thank you. What would you do to support the variety of industries across the district?
Well, I'm listening to folks and hearing their needs directly. Like I said, I was just on a farm a couple days ago, and I didn't realize that small and medium farms are required to measure literally every ounce of cow, you know what, of cow poop. And then they have to report back to the EPA. Seems a little excessive. I made a couple, calls to friends who've worked on farm bills before, and they were saying, yeah, that's extra red tape. So I'm meeting people where they are, and I'm hearing from them. I'm not running for a political agenda or for myself. I am running for the people. For the people. So I'm hearing from them. I want to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, though, in Douglas County. And the work that the economic development is pretty impressive, frankly. I think that there's a lot of potential for our aerospace, for AI, for quantum. And there's federal investments already working in Colorado. I want to make sure those are coming to our district. And I used to work at the National Science Foundation. We were awarded a climate hub in Wyoming. The deadline is today, but there's funding right now. If you have a climate tech startup, it's available. You just need to apply. So also be with it and that representative to the resources that already exist to help our farmers, to help our ranchers, to help our entrepreneurs, to help our employers and our developers. They're out there. We just need somebody willing to roll up their sleeves, do the work, and bring those parts together. It's really about partnership.
Yes, as a legislator, I am the one on the stage who has experience in bringing those partnerships together and to bringing stakeholders to the table and ensuring that their voices are heard. And I've never worked for an organization that supported a carbon tax, more taxes, more theft of your money. Unfortunately, it has. And if we're going to talk about the red tape in the EPA, the real issue to address is the EPA itself, and to minimize that or defund it altogether, because that is the biggest hindrance our farmers and ranchers, our oil and gas workers, our outfitters face on a regular basis. It is the regulations of bureaucrats. And I want Congress to do their job to legislate and appropriate and not pass the buck to the bureaucrats like Democrats like to do.
Okay, thank you. Calvarese, I bet you've got something to say about that.
How can you afford partnerships when your answer to everything is to defund it, to cancel it, shut the government if you don't get your way? That's not my kind of partnership. I like to get things done.
You both raised, let's talk about the federal budget and deficits. You're keeping in mind that the congressional budget projects that by 2034, in another decade, we'll be spending $0.7 trillion a year on interest payments in federal debt, as much as Medicare. Both parties said they want to rein in deficit spending, but it's also risen under both parties' administrations. What spending, Patricia Calvarese, what's to cut? Not just slowly increase, but actually cut. And what's the budget you want to grow and position the economy for the future?
Before we talk about cuts, let's reshore all the corporate gains that right now are incentivized to be sheltered in offshore tax havens. There's a 0% corporate tax rate right now for hiding your money abroad. Let's address that. The middle class needs a tax break. That is completely true. Absolutely. And I don't think that we should, or anybody in this room, should be paying for the very, very, very tippity top of income to have a handout. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. Getting into cuts, we could look at redundancies where we are maybe being more efficient. Here's the other thing. The government is dated. We're still using things like fax machines. If we can be more innovative in the way we're using AI and technology even in the federal government, there's a lot throughout it. That's what it is. But let's keep in mind, it was the 2 Republican administrations that added to our debt. We were actually on track to pay it down. There is non-defense discretionary spending in certain things like infrastructure that ultimately lead to GDP, which can help us ultimately pay down our debt long term.
What parts of federal spending would you cut? And is there any that you would want to grow, position the economy for the future?
Yeah, so first of all, one of the first things I did in the majority of this Congress was fight to get single subject legislation and individual appropriations bill. This is where Congress needs to step in and do their job. It has been advocated to bureaucrats for far too long through omnibus mini resolutions. I wanted us to sit down and go through that line by line programmatic spending so we could cut areas that your tax dollars do not need to go into. I do not agree with Republican debt as much as I do not agree with Democrat. We have got to get our spending under control. There are areas where we want the funding to go to, but it does not need to go to programs like a chief diversity officer or something that promotes one industry over another, like the Inflation Reduction Act did. We know that that did not reduce inflation. Even Joe Manchin said this bill was never designed to reduce inflation. There was $344 billion towards so-called renewable energy, which is extremely unrenewable. And you have the federal government propping up one industry over the other and creating an imbalance in the market. We need to allow the market to decide what industry is going to be most reliable, most responsible, and we do a darn good job with our fossil fuel industry. We could do an even better job if we begin to introduce a more nuclear option.
Yeah, thank you. Calvarese.
You said folks want our congressperson to do their job, and I think that is exactly right. And you haven't done it. You haven't passed it. You just kick a bunch of CRs down the road, and I'll tell you what, as someone who's worked in government, it's disruptive. It's not helpful. It hurts commerce. It hurts industry. It hurts the private because they can't plan. They don't know if they can count on somebody to roll up their sleeve, get the job done, or if it's just going to be chaos and mayhem for headlines, which is what it has been. And I think folks deserve better.
Absolutely needs to pass a budget. Budget must balance, and that's why I introduced legislation to do exactly that. I never voted for a continuing resolution because we need to get in and do the work of going through that programmatic spending line by line and ensuring that we are stewards of your tax dollars. Now, when it comes to actually doing the work, I've had over 75 of my legislative priorities signed into law that are currently benefiting all of Colorado and much of the western United States. I'm very proud of the work that I have done to ensure that our federal lands, our counties that have federal lands are getting those payment in lieu of taxes. Foresters are taking care of our rural community hospitals and so much more. What I'm going to continue to work on as your Congresswoman.
All right, quick follow-up here. Tricia Calvarese, what's the one bill that you could introduce that help businesses in the district?
I think that what would even help is if we go ahead and appropriate what's already passed, right? So we have it's not even that big of an uphill battle. It's bipartisan. It's already passed. It is reshoring American innovation. We're already seeing it in ships. It's going to complement the plan that the Economic Development Corps has to attract employers here. We want to dovetail that. We want to work with you guys. So I would say be fighting tooth and nail for that, for the bill for the CHIPS and Science Act to make sure that we're funding it. Because here's the thing, we're in competition. It's not just with one country, it's many. And American competitiveness, our leadership is not a foregone conclusion. We have those investments, both in the places that have been left behind, overlooked, as well as our people. And there's so much potential in our district. So I'm going to be fighting for that, to bring those investments home.
Okay, so what's one bill sponsored and passed? And just for context, you talked about the Pueblo Jobs Act in the 3rd District. Is there something like that in the 4th CD that could really get things moving?
First of all, my legislation that I think would benefit Colorado and the West more than anything is active forest management. If we can get in and actually responsible about the fuels that are on the ground and the management that needs done in the forest, well, then we can have more water throughout our entire state because that is our top issue. On the western side of the Continental Divide is 90% of the water for Colorado. On the eastern side of the Continental Divide is 90% of the population. So if we can work together and have healthy forests, therefore have healthy watershed, more storage projects, well, then there's more for western Colorado to share with eastern Colorado, and we can have more economic development areas like Douglas County, and also our farmers and ranchers would thrive having that extra water flow.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our lightning. These will be short answer questions, either yes, no, or keep it to hundreds. You'll each have a minute after we're done with this if you want to elaborate anything or so. I'll start with Lauren Boebert. What two committees are you asked to serve on in the next Congress?
I love the two committees that I currently serve on. I serve on the House Natural Resources Committee, and that puts me in to have a seat at the table to advocate for our top issues in Colorado, our water, like our precious natural resources that we rely on to have growing and prospering communities. There is so much in the natural resources that touches every bit of Colorado and the West, and it is a committee that I've been proud to serve on, and that I love having government oversight. In fact, I would really like to have every committee in Congress have an oversight component rather than just oversight.
All right, thank you. Trish Calvarese, what two committees would you like to serve on?
Appropriations and the committee to take on the Chinese Communist Party.
Special thank you.
Three real committees, that's not a committee.
Well,
It's a subcommittee for this Congress.
It's a select committee.
That's a select committee.
Right, and that will change next Congress.
Okay, not a standing. Let's move on. Tricia, do you have a favorite economist or economic thinker you look to help make sense of economic issues?
I used to, David Silvers. I had the honor of working with him at the AFL-CIO. He's been doing a lot of great work of how do you lift up the middle class.
Okay. Lauren Boebert?
Well, it certainly is not someone who's a union, but my biggest economists that I look to are the business owners that I represent. That is who I go to. I have been a small business owner. I have signed both sides of the check. I understand how government coming in and taxing and overregulating and creating fees that are unnecessary burdens small businesses. And so the greatest voice to have on economics is the business owner, locals, and the community.
All right, thank you.
So the AFL-CIO is not a union, it is a federation of unions, and it works very closely with businesses. Unions want business, and in fact, they just did a partnership with Microsoft. So I want to, again, partnership. I want to bring people to the table for excellent jobs and economic prosperity for everyone in this room and beyond.
Go on to the next one. And let's let the answers to this just one word. The federal corporate tax rate is 21. Donald Trump has said he'd like to lower it. Kamala Harris has suggested possibly raising it. What do you support in the next Congress? Raising the corporate tax, lowering it, or keeping it the same? Tricia, Calvarese?
I think keep it the same and let's restore the tax havens from corporations.
Lauren?
Unfortunately, she's already been on the record for wanting to cut Donald Trump's tax cuts. I would like them significantly.
Okay, thanks. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. It's been an hour. It's been 2009. Lauren Boebert, do you support raising the federal minimum wage, and if so, should it be?
No, I do not.
Tricia?
I sure do. I also support increasing the sub-tipped minimum, but on sub-tip, that's at $2.15. So I think we need to $15 minimum wage, and I think $15 on tips too.
Or just eliminate taxes on tips.
That's pretty good. We'll ask that now. Do you agree with both presidential candidates that tipped income should be exempt from taxes?
Yeah.
The one who created the idea, President Trump, yes, I do.
Okay.
I was a good idea, regardless of where it came from, and I was honored to work for a Trump appointee.
All right. Tricia, do you support replacing any part of Social Security's guaranteed benefits with individual investment accounts?
I do not.
Lauren, no. Okay. Lauren, do you support enabling Medicare to mediate lower drug prices for individuals in private plans in addition to seniors?
There should always be negotiation that is working. I'm not for price fixing.
Okay.
You literally voted against the bill, like exactly what he's
I'm
asking
sure
about.
the bill is perfect in its form.
I would absolutely support it. I have access to life-extending medication. You can afford it just like my dad did.
Okay, Tricia, should Congress pass a law forbidding foreign entities, including from China, from buying up farmland in the United States?
Absolutely, yes. And we were seeing that in Arizona, where I had a company from Saudi Arabia pumping water into hungry alfalfa. That hurts us as an upwater state, you bet.
Okay, Lauren Boebert?
Yes, I do oppose China and any of our foreign adversaries purchasing our farmlands, especially around military bases.
Okay, that's, Lauren, can you name a Democratic member of Congress that you work with?
This is going to shock some. Congressman Jamie Raskin. He's a ranking member on the Oversight Committee, and he and I have a very good personal rapport and are working together actually currently to bring forward my ZIP bill that I would love to talk about more later, to bring that before the Oversight and have bipartisan support on it and get it all the way through.
Okay, thank you. And Tricia, is there a Republican member of Congress that you think you can work well with?
I actually really like Ken Buck. I think he was doing very important work, especially on taking on tech.
Okay. All right, we'll get back to a question here. The Trump tax cuts for individual payers will expire at the end of next year if Congress does nothing. Would you vote to reduce these cuts or to revise them? And if you want to extend any of them, how do you pay for it? What are the offsets in the budget? Let's go with Tricia Calvarese first.
It's right, like there's some pieces if it's helping our businesses and we can offset it, absolutely, we can extend those. But the middle class needs a tax break. The middle class needs. I also, one thing I can tell you I do support, which I know J.D. Vance has supported, Kamala Harris has supported it, child tax credit. It is one of the best ways to end child poverty and gives everybody a break. A lot of folks in the middle class. So that's something that I'm fighting for.
Lauren Boebert, would you vote to extend the Trump tax cuts for individual ratepayers?
I would vote to extend President Trump's tax cuts, and also I would love the opportunity to have more amendments to cut them even further. There are plenty of pay-fors that we can find within the federal government, cover the cost, but also just the economic growth that will take place from those who are able to invest in more business opportunities and in their employees. And when it comes to child tax credits, sure, that is wonderful. However, I do draw the line for American citizens receiving that child tax credit, because the last one that was voted on in this Congress included child tax credits for anchor babies, for children who were whose parents are illegal aliens.
Okay, thanks. Tricia Calvarese, do you have a response to that?
If you're going to take care of folks, look, what about our veterans, Lauren? Because you're talking about lots of cuts and how to pay for things. I think if you're going to first, you can't put veterans last. So I do just want to point out that you voted against care for veterans exposed to cancer-causing toxins and burn pits during war. So we definitely have priorities, because I believe we should take care of our veterans, always. And to anybody here, thank you for your service.
Are you done? Okay.
Go on.
When it comes to our veterans, I have absolutely put them first. In my first year, we were in the minority, and unfortunately not all the legislation was great. And the omnibus bills will put in something really beautiful for our veterans. But again, we're not voting for something that we have 22 hours to read that's over 2 pages long. And when it comes to our veterans, I have returned hundreds of millions of dollars to my constituents, which include veterans who have been strangled by red tape and bureaucracy and unable to get the benefits and the care that they needed. I was able for 2 veterans in my district who were not appreciated for their service and give them their Purple Hearts that they deserved to have. One waited about 50 years, the other one waited over 2 decades. Our service members are a priority for me. I have the Pueblo Jobs Act. I fought to give them a raise in the National Defense Authorization Act, signed into law, and I have multiple amendments that increase care for our veterans. If you'd like to see what I've done, go to my website, boebert.house.gov and go to the Getting Things Done tab, and you can see exactly what I've done in working for our veterans.
All right,
The folks in this room
Yeah.
are not, they're not.
I'm not
foolish.
spending $1 billion forever because we couldn't get a couple pieces of language right in legislation. Just because a bill is on the floor does not make it the only option. I thought that we could have amendments on the House floor. When that bill first came up, I was in the minority, and amendments were on the House floor. I could not give a Colorado voice to the men and women who have served in our military on that legislation. Because
That was
we were not
one
allowed
piece of
to.
legislation. What about cuts to the VA? You proposed significant cuts to the VA that would hurt veterans, caregivers, their families. It would hurt homeless vets. It would hurt telehealth for vets. Here and tell us that you voted against one bill that you have somehow for veterans. No, thank you.
There are many things that we can reform and get within the federal government and our legislation and our spending. How about you go and actually speak to a veteran and ask them how difficult it is to get the care when the VA has $40 billion a year in their annual budget, and see how difficult it is. Fortunately, we have Democrats that we are fighting on a regular basis who want universal health care, who want a single payer system. Well, ask the federal government ask the veteran how good the federal government is at taking care of their health needs. They get in the way more than anything, and we need to bring choice back to our veterans so they can go to the doctor of their choice, the clinic, the hospital of their choice, and receive the care that they need without being on waiting lists, without even having to call their member of Congress to cut through all of that just to be seen. That sounds great. That's great. Those are all things that
Representative Boebert benefited from her own medical emergency, right? You got to telehealth the doctor, you got to go into a hospital on a road that worked. Why shouldn't our veterans have the same?
all right.
So I'm fighting for that.
Let's move on to we're in time for our last question. Something like 58 million people received Social Security benefits at the end of last year. Trustees for the Social Security and Medicare trust funds say that they face significant financing issues over the next decade. By mid-2030s, will no longer be able to pay out 100% to the scheduled benefits. They urge Congress to take action sooner rather than later to eliminate financing shortfalls. Laura Boebert, what's your plan to fix Social Security and Medicare funding? What are 90 seconds?
First of all, we need all of our funding taken care of. There do need to be reforms within Social Security and Medicare. I've never voted for or advocated for taking that away from anyone. That is money that you have put in and made those investments for your retirement in the future. We do need to have serious conversations on what reforms look like. I do not believe that anyone receiving a Social Security check should be taxed on that money. You have already been taxed on that, and I would like to do away with that. But also like I said, there are plenty of pay-fors. We can take some of the $304 to wind and solar that really we're just benefiting China with and put that towards our seniors and their Medicare and Social Security needs, rather than just continuing to prosper China by solar panels for them, when they're using child and slave labor to extract the earth minerals that are needed for them.
Okay, thanks. Tricia, what do we do to fix the Social Security and Medicare trust funds?
Well, again, the Congress will not being completely forthright with you. She signed on to a plan that would raise the retirement age and would cut Social Security and Medicare.
Show me the signature.
I think instead of that, we should scrap the cap. And you know what? We need to fund our rural hospitals. You mentioned that earlier.
I have done that.
Well, you actually have.
Yes, I
Yeah,
have.
and the Melissa Memorial Hospital is waiting for a call, which I was actually on the ground. We went, we saw them, you weren't there, they invited you. So I'm happy to tell you what it's like. This was an organized by the community initiative. This is not top down, this is not government. This is self-organizing folks who are farmers and ranchers, and they believe in their community. So they built a hospital, it provides a ton of services, amazing. Here's the problem. Folks are calling 911 and getting turned away. Because this hospital, you know what they need? They need another ambulance. You know how much this extra ambulance costs? $300,000. $300,000 to be able to take emergencies in the rural parts of our community. I am wanting to make sure that they get their ambulance. And you know what? I already found the funding for it. It's already passed. So I'm already working with those folks however I can, and I'm going to continue to do that. Because that's what the role is about. It's supposed to be helping people, not just your sound bites and not just about your health.
So I've secured tens of millions of dollars for our rural health community hospitals in Colorado. I've done that as the sitting member of Congress through the appropriations process to ensure that they are getting the monies that they need and deserve. If we want to be able to enable our communities to afford an ambulance or a fire engine, well then bring back good paying American oil and gas jobs. Because in Garfield County, I saw the fire departments being built, the hospitals being built, the colleges being built, the roads being maintained, and we were regulated out. Fire stations were overbuilt. They bought too many engines because there were those revenues come in from the oil and gas industries until Democrats forced them out of our state, and now we have fire departments who are selling their engines because they can no longer afford them. We kicked out the good paying jobs that was providing them and our communities with that first responder service.
All right, thank you. Tricia,
So the Inflation Reduction Act has a ton of potential to bring excellent, high-paid, quality jobs to our district. And in fact, talk about gas, there's tons of pipeline that we need to replace right now. It's leaking left and right. Those are also excellent quality jobs. We just need somebody, again, who's willing to roll up these and actually make some progress happen and get work done.
Great, thank you. Folks, you've been applauding throughout a little bit, but let's give both of the candidates a big round of applause. I want to thank you both and thank the audience. This is, it's not easy running for office, and it's not easy getting up there and defending what you're running on. So we're at the end here. Each get 2 minutes to give some closing remarks. We'll start with one Boebert.
Again, it's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to rep Colorado. Colorado as a whole is where my heart and soul is. All of us coming together and prospering together is what makes our state so fantastic and what allows the states around us, our neighbors, to prosper as well. Our farmers and our ranchers, they're the ones who are feeding America. They need to be put first. We need to ensure that they have the resources available to them to be able to continue to feed America so America can be secure in our food. When it comes to our energy workers, thank you. The energy that is provided here in Colorado and what could be provided even more is so beneficial to everyone. We could literally export freedom to our allies with our clean liquefied natural gas, rather than relying on China, who uses child and slave labor to bring in solar panels of our agricultural land. In every area, I'm advocating for you, whether it's in the suburbs or out in the plains, whether it's in our national forests or down by the river. Each and every day, I am finding creative ways to meet with stakeholders, to bring in the experts, and to draft legislation that will benefit. The legislation that I've introduced has largely been bipartisan. The bills that I have passed through the House and even signed into law, my Pueblo Jobs Act, have been bipartisan. I have had over 80 amendments on the House floor because I fought to open that up to give a Colorado voice to the things that are going on in Washington, D.C. Those have overwhelmingly bipartisan. I will continue to work for you, for Colorado. It's an honor to be your voice in Washington, D.C., where so many people want you at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm going to lift you up.
So I had the joy of meeting 2 folks from the Douglas County Economic Development Board at an event a couple weeks ago. And between the 3 of us, we represent the Highlands Ranch High School classes of 2000, 2005, and 2015. Now, Lord, you might not know that. That's a public school up the street. I am for the class of 2025 and beyond. That there are opportunities for college that are accessible and affordable. And here's the there is no traditional four-year college or university in all of Colorado for it. So I'm also running to create those pathways into the middle class starting from high school. Both traditional trades into IBEW, they have an amazing apprenticeship program. It's earn while you learn. You don't take on any debt, you become an electrician, and then you can go to Metro State on top of it for free. Those are what we need, that's what we need now to build the industries of the future. So traditional trades, industries of the future, and bringing partners together, because that's how you create an entrepreneurial ecosystem, is where you have that skill, that educational opportunities, and a federal partner fighting for you. Now, we've heard Lauren Boebert talk a lot about herself in this debate. I'm not running for myself. I am running for firefighters, for teachers, for care workers. For care workers like the woman who was there through my parents' care. They should be able to raise their family, for housing, to drive costs down, and to keep America competitive. Sincerely, American innovation has inspired the world over, right? There's nothing that we can't. So I'm so excited to work with all of you for the future. And there's so many people in this room right now who just have been with me through this whole journey. I just want to acknowledge you all. Thank you so much for confirming the values I was raised on. That ordinary people can rise in the face of adversity, that we can choose freedom over fear and unity over division. So thank you all. Thank you to Rebecca for hosting us at Economic Development Court, Ernest, to the Free Press here as well. Thank you all so much. And thank you.